Welcome back to the 7th Grade Mustache. On this episode, we are talking about all of the cock blockers to black greatness. And there have always been some group or organization, an army, an ideology, a person, or a behavioral trait that has run interference between the children of Africa and the realization of full potential. The questions are, when were the highest points of existence and what stifled it? As kids, we grew up on Marvel Comics and DC Comics, but we knew about the Black Panther. There's very few black superheroes. The more we start to learn about the Black Panther in the 90s and Wakanda and the Kingdom of Wakanda, it was this fantastic thing that was essentially created by white comic book writers, and Jewish comic book writers. They created this fantastic African utopia. And it kind of went quiet for a while. And then when the movie came out, it was this big thing. It was a huge resurgence. Everybody's all about it, tweeting about it, all these little kids with toys, the whole thing. And then, it's Wakanda's this African utopia. And so I had these deep thoughts about, why has this never happened? Why is it that we have made these huge strides in civilization?
Supposedly. Yeah.
See, you fucking up because you're getting caught up in this modern shit. I'm talking about all together. See, don't Americanize our accomplishments, okay? Don't do that.
No.
So the thing is that you can't Americanize our accomplishments because then you minimalize your potential.
You erase it.
You erase it. And then what you're doing is you're doing the work for these Eurocentric, mind control, MK Ultra, historical rewriters, timeline erasers, CERN machine button flippers. So here's the thing though, man. Why have we never reached this trans-dimensional zenith with all this interdimensional great nanotechnology and all this crazy stuff, vibranium? And it would appear that Egypt was the highest of heights. We can start by talking about social engineering. And the Roman Empire in the 2nd century AD realized that they could save money and resources and lives by using war as a last resort and using social engineering to get the results that they wanted. So if that didn't work, then they would call in the troops and just invade and kill everybody. But they would tweak things from the inside, psychologically and socially. And by having a caste system, by manipulating politics, by creating derision, they then controlled the thoughts of society.
One of the things that they did early on, they would invade an area, start killing off the men, and they would start, having sex with the women, making children that were part Roman, part whatever the area that. And we've been seeing this for years. We see it we saw it in the Caribbean. We see it even now that if somebody is multicultural, that many times they have a loyalty to let's just say white people. Like, hey, I'm half white, I'm half black, but you're not treated the same, or you're mistreated. Or I've even seen where the grandpa dies and the half black child gets a completely different inheritance. Like they're an afterthought.
Which is good because then that wealth can be shared with the rest of the black family. So, but that's
no. They're giving less. I saw somebody when their grandpa died, the half black kid got like 25,000. Other kids got 150,000.
Yeah,
like literally. Like,
oh yeah. That's that favoritism bullshit and colorism shit.
Yeah,
but check this out. So that actually happens because the Roman Empire and the people of Rome, because the empire was so wide and vast, that it comprised many different nationalities. So by having people of different nationalities under this one banner, you had an ideology. You had people that were believing in a standard and the eagle of Rome and what that represented.
The point we're making is that Rome learned that you control more people with the pen than with the sword. We can get a lot more done. People become loyal to us. They want to be like us. And we're controlling what you aspire to. Well, that's the same thing we see in black society right now. And what we're really talking about is not just black people in America, but there's organizations. There are things set up in place that they do this worldwide. Why does Africa have all the riches, all the wealth, oil, gold, diamonds, anything else, but is the least powerful continent on Earth? Because it's by design. If you want to piss somebody off, and people love to try to have these conversations about racism. They want to talk, well, this is better. Let me ask you a question. How many black billionaires are there in the world? It's what, 12 to 20 based on, the economy. But it's about 20 black billionaires. There's Africa, India, all these different continents, but there's about 12 black billionaires. Now, how many billionaires are there in America? There's 627 to 643, again, depending on the market. So how many of those billionaires in America are black? Maybe less than 7. Next question. How many of those billionaires are gay? Probably about 40%, half. So whenever people try to attribute like gay and black together, no. Being black will stop you from being rich and powerful. But being gay, So you have organizations and things put in place to stop us from making money and ever controlling our own markets, controlling our own nation, our own well-being, because we have all the physical resources, so they might as well control us. You see it early on, even when Europeans went into China and had everybody addicted to opium and stuff like that. That's because the Chinese had silver, so they wanted that. So, okay, we'll get you hooked on something else. You see it in Native Americans. Got them hooked
All right,
on
okay. Firewater, settle down. So here's the deal, though. Let's go back to Kush. All right? Let's go to Kush, which existed from 2100 BC to 550 AD. The kingdom of Kush was an ancient Nubian kingdom located in modern-day Sudan and South Sudan. Egypt was Kush's main trading partner, and because of Egypt's fall, bronze was difficult to come across. Also, other valuable items such as cedar, acacia, and other items could not be located due to the decline in the money and the trade routes that were affected because the Romans had began to control that area along the Nile that the people of Kush relied on for trade. And so they cut off the trade routes, which cut off the money, which then affected agriculture, which because they were importing a lot of food and very little was grown domestically, they began to starve. And so that's how you get to a point where you have these pyramids, which have been destroyed and everything's fallen into ruin. It's because they have been tied to Egypt for a very long time. But there were Nubian pharaohs from Kush that occupied Egypt. But their relationship with Egypt has been this back and forth fight for a long time. But see,
that's true.
But these weren't blacks and Arabs fighting each other. This is just black on black crime. And this black on black crime goes back to the founding of Egypt, because there have been black people along the banks of the Nile that formed these walled cities over 6,000 years ago, 7,000 years ago. But when you look at the numbers, you find that it's very interesting because they say that the kingdom of Kush began around 2100 BC, at the same time that the first city of Mesopotamia, was founded. Here's the deal, though. So Mesopotamians weren't white people. They weren't Semitic people. They weren't Arab or Jews. They were black people. Now, you can look this up all over. It'll tell you that the Sumerians were not Semitic and they were not Caucasian. So you had these ancient black civilizations in the Fertile Crescent in Africa and going all the way down deep into Africa. But right now we're talking about primarily Kush and its relationship with Egypt, because there was this back and forth, and they were always fighting. One would control the other, and they would just bicker back and forth over control. Always fighting over control. Because, but here's the reason. Here's the thing, though. They're fighting over resources. The same things that governments of the world fight over today. And they were fighting over the trade routes. They were fighting over the floodplains of the Nile, where all the fertile soil was to grow the wheat, which is food that everybody along the Nile relied upon. And so,
look, but don't forget this. But Nubia Rome never beat Nubia. The only ones that ever beat Nubia was going back and forth between Egypt, but everybody else fell to Nubia. That's something they don't ever want to talk about.
Okay, now that's a good point because, all right, so the Romans did occupy a part of Kush, but they were beat back by one of the queen rulers and her army.
Yep.
But what is hard to find is the outcome of that war that was fought. All that you can dig up is the fact that the Romans realized they could not conquer the land completely because they took part of it, but they realized they could not conquer it completely. And so what they did is they signed a peace treaty, which means we're going to ease our way up out of here.
Look, if you look it up, they talk about one of the queens gave that the Caesar a bundle of golden arrows, not golden, but gold arrows, literally arrows made of gold. She said, "Look,
that's symbolism.
This is a symbol of our peace. But if you decide to cross me, you'll need them arrows too. I'm giving you some weapons." So, we're not told this. The point we're trying to make is that these organizations, these things that were put in place many years ago, recognized who was great, and they systematically began to tear that down. And you still have these obstacles in society today. We always, people love to talk about Jesse Jackson. People love to talk about Farrakhan. And I remember seeing this one time where they weren't debating, but it's like a round table with all these, black leaders. And Farrakhan went off, and and Jesse was saying, "Oh, we got to march bullshit," and Farrakhan was saying something else. And what about this? And everybody's cheering, and I'm like, well, let me get this straight. But Farrakhan still ain't talking about getting no guns and whooping no ass. Farrakhan still ain't talking about, hey, let's put this money together and do this. He's still talking about this. He's the other side of the coin for Jesse. You see what I'm saying? He's a prolific speaker. He gets you going. But at the end of the day, what's the difference between him, Jesse, and Al Sharpton? I think maybe Al Sharpton.
They're both. Listen, man. They're crafty procrastinators. Okay, just tell it like it is. But listen,
say it again.
They are both crafty procrastinators. Now we're gonna go down the line. And we're going to talk about all these highlights in Black history over the planet. But we want to talk about the peak. I mean, just doing it the hardest, going the hammest is Egypt. A sphinx and pyramids.
Pause for 1 second.
Go ahead.
We were talking about something earlier. Go back to what you were saying before. First things, we grew up growing up on Stan Lee. Stan Lee based most of his characters on people we knew. We all know Professor X was Martin Luther King. Magneto was Malcolm X. Black Panther, they say, which I can't prove, was based on Haile Selassie. And Wakanda was based on Ethiopia. But you got to remember, Ethiopia has been around much. The country is Ethiopia, but then the area of Kush is different. That's what they're talking about. They're not just talking about the modern day Ethiopia. They're talking about when Kush was that whole eastern side of Africa. It went all the way down to, past the Sudan and all that stuff. So there have been similarities. There have been things like that. So how did we get robbed of it? People forget.
So look, that's what we're talking about. Nubia. Nubia and Kush. Kush is going back and forth with Egypt all the time, bickering over resources. But when you look at the greatest accomplishments in the region, it was the building of the pyramids. Here's the deal. Wrap your mind around this. When you consider...
Who has more periods, Nubia or Egypt? Because I know you know the answer, but most people who are listening, you hear about the pyramids in Egypt. There are more pyramids and more obelisks in Nubia.
Yes.
They ain't going to teach you that.
But here's where I have a contention with that. Because the Great Pyramids were built, and the dimensions of the pyramids were built relating to the size, the diameter of the earth, the distance from the North Pole to the South Pole, and the circumference of it is related to the speed of light. Now, here is the most mind-blowing shit about that. Why would the speed of light be relevant to a society that you would think is earthbound? Because these people are from the stars. So
or they went to the stars,
or they would go to the stars on a regular basis. So
yes.
Or check this out. But here's the deal. The the Egyptian high culture, we're talking about the pyramids and the Sphinx, these are remnants of older civilizations. So these people who came from older civilizations, Atlantis and the civilization on Mars, came to Atlantis and came to Mu and then brought it to Egypt. They were making sure that these sacred sciences would endure the test of time. And so they put they put their knowledge in stone so that when man
never go nowhere.
Exactly. So that when man woke up out of this slumber, they would go and take these measurements and be like, oh, well, we've been lied to about who we are and where we come from. But look at this structure and measure this structure and compare this structure to the speed of light and the distance of the earth from one point to the other. Listen, man, first of all, these people who built these structures were operating on such a different level of thinking. They were using tools that could cut stone with sound. Okay, and then levitate it into place. Go ahead.
There's a reason that white folks love to talk about Egypt and not Kush and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
The main reason is because later on Egypt was taken over by the Caesars, and so they love to give you the impression that Egypt was always white or Arab. It was not. That's so.
Hold up, stop. I gotta stop you right there. The reason why I gotta interrupt you right here is because the Arabs did not exist as a people until 900 BC.
After these things, we know.
Wait, dude, the party was over by then. There was 5,000 years of partying going on, and then go ahead.
There's something else you need to add to this. Anybody who do your research about Atlantis, when Plato or Socrates, whichever one, is there a relative who was 800 years older than them that talks about it? He describes Atlantis as the sister to Egypt, the sister to Kemet. These ain't my words. This is somebody who's 1500
No,
years
Socrates. That was a Greek. Socrates said Atlantis is the sister to Egypt.
Yeah, I know that, but Socrates got the information from his older cousin. That's the actual writer. And
Solon.
He described it as the sister to Kemet or Egypt. So if that's the case, we're being told this is a high culture, this is a black culture, and so how do we go from these high? My brother's telling you, we were the highest. You know, every what they tell you, the deeper you dig, the blacker it gets. And so it makes it really difficult for you to enslave these people. Even there was a French explorer who said, what would happen if our slaves knew this is where they came from? They couldn't be our slaves. If you understand who you are in this place, you don't fall for this bullshit. But like I said, this is the history. When you're in high school and you're in world history, you learn about Greece, you learn about World War II, you learn about this bullshit. You learn about these organizations that have oppressed you. And then and what my brother just told you earlier, if you're brainwashed enough, because like I said, I didn't go back far enough when we started the conversation. But when you don't go back far enough, then all of a sudden you're talking about just slavery. All you know is slavery.
But see, but here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. So it is my perception that the Anunnaki and Enki and Enlil, the two alien brothers that were diddling the Sumerians, is my perception that is a parallel society to what the Atlanteans brought to Egypt.
Okay, so you want to get real deep. Okay, how about this? So when they talk about, I'm going to offend some people. Sorry.
Fuck it.
First things first. These German if you want to know about black people, check out those German archaeologists. We talked about this 2 episodes back, and it's something that nobody wants to understand. What did they find to make them stop looking? Because all of a sudden, these German archaeologists stopped finding shit. They stopped looking because either they found what they're looking for. So let's combine the story of the Anunnaki. Well, they said they came down here to mine gold, and then they messed with the DNA of the people that were already here. So they're talking about pastors talking about Cro-Magnon man and all that kind of stuff. But you got to understand something. The original humans are black. We were already here. These Africans, these tall, these dark people were already here. So what if these people were messing with those hairy creatures, the ones that were roaming around, the Cro-Magnon, the Neanderthal. They didn't mess with us. They didn't need to. They couldn't. We were already genetic perfection. So they fuck with the ones they can manipulate, make some creatures. So when you read about Noah's Ark and his kid finds a wife, was that a human person he was fucking with, or was that one of these Neanderthal motherfuckers? Was that one of these half-breeds? Because you got people, you got 5% of the population that have Neanderthal DNA. Not everybody, but there is 5% of the human population in Asia and in Europe that have Neanderthal DNA.
But hang on a second. Hang on. You got to back up, because Noah and his people were from a pre-existing civilization.
Yes, but you remember.
But hang on, dude. Hang on. Noah is the grandson of Enoch.
Yep.
And all those people are from the line of Adam and Eve. But here's the deal, though. That garden, that little human experiment, there were people outside the garden. There were black people outside the garden. And this is my problem with this, man, is that everybody wants you to think that we all come from those two people. I don't think so. I don't think so at all. I think that story is for Semites, man.
Okay, hold it. See, that's something that you talked about long before, and that Farrakhan had said something about, but people don't understand. The Bible is the story of the white man. And people, when you say
it's not. No, it's not. It's not the story of the white man, because white people didn't exist at that time.
No. You're misunderstanding. No, you're misinterpreting what I'm saying. I'm not talking about you're talking about the whole Bible. No, what Farrakhan is saying is that he's telling you where white people come from. Y'all just don't realize that's what they're talking about.
Yeah.
That's what yeah. We're not talking about the whole entire scope of the Bible, but I'm saying that there's spots in there where they name things and say things. Now, going back to these German archaeologists, whenever you watch these TV shows about Hitler, they always drop these little diamonds, these gems that nobody catches. And so we talked about it before, how they were trying to create a society based on the Neanderthal and the Cro-Magnon. They were saying, well, Neanderthal conquered the Cro-Magnon. And so I saw this German scientist like, well, what we realize now is that they were always crossbreeding. The Cro-Magnon and Neanderthal, the reason one didn't get rid of the other, they just ended up breeding and becoming something else. But all the true humans were already around. This is a documentary by Hitler. This is German scientists, but the true humans come from Africa. The only real humans come from Africa. And he's saying this show, and you're watching this, and you're like, wait a minute. So what you're saying is that there are some true humans that some kind of way got stuck someplace and started breeding with these things that weren't true humans. And so nobody wants to say that maybe that's where these people come from, or not every person is human. Because when you say the word human means skin color, hue is your skin color.
Right,
so
but
people, stick
with me for a second. I got you, but I hear what you're saying, man. I follow all that, but check this out.
Of course you do.
The Anunnaki come to Earth, and they take this Negro DNA, and they splice it with some of their own DNA, and they make all these different things, the Nephilim, okay? And that's how you start getting giants, okay? You got this explosive Negro DNA, and then you put some alien shit in there, and then you get motherfuckers that make LeBron James look like, Tattoo or a fucking little midget. So, this is the thing, though. Then shit gets crazy. God has to flush the toilet, floods that area, tells his people that were from the garden, the Semites, build this ship. I'm going to flush the toilet. I'm going to get rid of all this bullshit. And you go for a little boat ride and you come back. They get out the boat and they start propagating. They go out and they find some more people and they start, spreading their seed around again. Meanwhile, the areas that didn't flood, life continued. As a matter of fact, life had been going on before the Anunnaki came down and fucked shit up. There was a whole parallel timeline that was going on while that was going on. It's called Atlantis. It's called Atlantis that went to Egypt. You know what I'm saying? It's Lemuria and Mu. All this was going on before these Anunnaki people came down and fucked shit up.
Okay. Okay. See, this is why I'm disagreeing with you. This is why I'm saying when the Anunnaki came down, they saw a high society over here, and they couldn't fuck with them.
That we're agreeing. We're agreeing, dude. That's what we're saying.
No. The only part we disagree on, I'm saying they grabbed the caveman and fuck with the caveman DNA because they couldn't fuck with. See, you saying that they mixed with ours. I'm saying it's just opposite. I'm saying they came down and said,
they was fucking with everything. They was dibbling, dabbling. They want all the different strains. They're like, I want some fireweed. I want some some regs, some mids, and we got some fucking dirt weed.
Here's the deep shit that how come the slavery story? The Anunnaki grew their own slaves. How do you know that the white folks weren't meant to be slaves and we were the high culture and it shit got flipped later on and they know what they're talking about. They knew the stories because these stories.
But here's the thing though, it did that sounds legit, but karma is a motherfucker. So God punished the black people, and the Middle Passage is how we were punished. But hang on, take it easy, slow down. We got a lot to get to, man. Okay. So the Olmecs existed from 1200 BC to 400 BC, and they were a well-developed society. They had a religion, and, excuse me, and their religion had its own cosmology and several deities. The Olmec believed there were three parts of the known universe. The first was Earth, where they lived, and it was represented by the Olmec dragon. The watery underworld was the second part. It was the realm of the fish monster. Yep. And the skies were the home of the bird creature. And in addition to these three deities, they have five more. There's Maize, the corn god, the water god, the feathered serpent, the banded-eyed deity, and the werewolf jaguar. So it's a dude that turned into a werewolf, manimal. So... Yep. So some of these deities, such as the feathered serpent, would continue into later cultures such as the Aztec and the Maya. So,
Quetzalcoatl, the winged serpent.
But here's the thing, though. People can't figure out why the Olmecs disappeared, what caused them to go into decline, and the two cities that they had were grown and swallowed by the jungle. But see, this civilization, this black civilization, went into decline 2,000 years before the conquistadors showed up. They don't know what happened to them.
It was Trace Levant. It was three major cities in the Gulf. Trace Levant.
Vernal was another one.
Yeah, but the bottom line is that we know for a fact. The reason you recognize the name Olmecs, those are the heads they found over there, where they found like 25 these huge heads. Now, some of them look black, some of them don't. And people get mad because they're trying to explain, well, how did these black folks get here way before Columbus? And that's what all these books you read about. But like I said, we talked about this in past stories, or past episodes, excuse me. But right now, the whole thing is that they're trying to tell you that the first people in America were Asians, but now they're finding out that's not the case. They have proof. The first thing they found was there was a underwater shrine in Mexico, and so they find this, and these people are well preserved. So they do the DNA test, and this shit goes back like 5,000 to 9,000 years, and these people were pretty much completely Asian, and so they say, "Oh, it's Asians were first." Well, then they get in the middle of Mexico, and they find this mine. Is this mine? I said mine. Excuse me. I don't know what they were mining. They find this mine. It's 50,000 years old. 50,000 years old. Everybody in there was black, and not just were they black. They know for a fact that these people came from Australia. That these were Aboriginal people. That the Aborigines came from Australia, New Guinea, that area. And so those were the original.
So these were people that were from Lemuria.
Hold it. That's true. They proved that the Lemurian DNA. Yes, that is very true. I wasn't even going there yet. But my only point to this was that the original people that were in South America, the Americas, South America, Mexico, that area, were black people, and we know that yes, Lemuria had something to do with that. Mu had something to do with that. That is correct. Lemuria is a Greek name or a Roman name, but Mu had something to do with those people being there. That is true. That's some deep shit right there. What we're trying to tell you is when you look up these places and you do this research, these people were great people already. We've been at the pinnacle. Where we are now is pedestrian. This computer shit, this shit where they got you jerking off on the internet. This is at the pinnacle of
Distractions.
civilization. Yeah, these are distractions. And when you do your research on Mu, they had 3 races: a white race, a black race, and some kind of Asian race. They all lived in harmony. And when you realize this thing goes back, I always say 50,000 years, but some of the stuff says like 70,000 to 100,000 years that these societies existed in harmony. They knew that the flood was coming. They knew.
But you're not allowed to learn about this, and all the information about this has been hidden because it fucks with the narrative. It fucks with the official timeline.
With their timeline.
But here's the thing, though. Rich white folks in England have very old books from the fall of the last kingdom in Egypt that have details about this information, about these ancient empires.
The library at Alexandria. You read about that.
Some of those books, some of those scrolls got out. And some of these people in England have these scrolls.
Well, here's the thing. If you ever watch those documentaries by Ivan Van Sertima, he's the one who's always referred to his book, The Camp Before Columbus. He says that so much of these artifacts are in private culture.
Yeah, it's called the Vatican Library.
Oh, hold on. That's just one of them. But he even talks about one of those heads disappearing. One of the Olmec heads weighs 5 tons. How do you steal a 5-ton head?
With a Chinook helicopter.
The bottom line is, where did it go? Is it a private collection? When he was the one who negotiated the return of the Sphinx's nose. Yes, the Sphinx's nose was shot off by, we were taught that it was shot off by Napoleon's army and that it doesn't exist. Yes, it was in a private collection, and now Egypt has it because Ivan Van Sertima negotiated a deal. So that tells you that somebody was sitting there with the Sphinx's nose in their basement, showing it to their friends, snorting cocaine, laughing at the shit. So if this information exists, why does it not be disseminated? Because if it got out, we would not fall for the BS. We would expect more things. We wouldn't care about money. We would be chasing down bullshit. So it's important that they distract you with things that aren't important. For the record, if race doesn't matter, why do they make Jesus white? If this doesn't matter, why do they do this? That's because this is about control of your mind and your thoughts and your behaviors. We're dropping these things on you because my brother is telling you that there's records out there that how about this? Native Americans, we talk about where their books at. Only 7 of Native American books survived because the Pope at the time, our bishop said, burn those. Those are satanic. Those are the devil. So they had book burnings of Native American books. The only thing that exists are those codexes that we were talking about before. Look them up. Native Americans had a culture in writing, and they had some very deep thoughts, some stuff that they're destroyed because they didn't want us thinking about that shit. They didn't want us to recognize because they know who the original inhabitants were. So it's a hustle. It's a mind fuck.
Okay.
Wakanda does exist.
Okay.
It's existed. We've seen it.
In pieces we have. But here's the deal.
Let's
move ahead to the Moor Empire. The Moor Empire existed from 711 AD to 1614 AD. The Moors brought to Spain the sacred knowledge of ancient Kemet, architecture, astronomy, astrology, advanced mathematics, science, art, and music. They also
don't forget medicine.
Medicine. They also built 17 universities, bathhouses, light poles, paved roads, and many more things that people take for granted in modern society today.
Castles. How about that?
Castles. Yeah. But we had an entire show about this, so I'm not going to repeat everything we said or talked about in the show because that would take a long time. So
we don't want to rehash.
The Moors were an amalgam, a mix of different people, but mostly African. And they spoke Arabic because that was the dominant religion. And wherever they went, because they were with Arabs, they would spread Islam by sword. And so they were a warring people that got into a lot of shit and a lot of fights with people. And so because of this warring mindset, they had civil wars and quarrels and disputes and uprisings in their own kingdoms. These struggles for power. It wasn't all kiss, kiss, make up. Nope. These motherfuckers were violent and they were fighting with each other a lot. So there was beef within the Moorish Empire. And there was a civil war in the Moorish Empire toward the end that caused problems. So, but it was when the King of Spain kicked them out in 1614, which was the nail in the coffin for the Moorish Empire, because they would then have to go back into these desert lands and live there when they were just, kicking their feet up and living good in the temperate climate of Europe. And so they went back into these scattered areas that they were living in, never to rise to prominence again. But it is not to be forgotten what they did contribute to society in general, a great deal. And we've benefited from all this. But then again, you have to understand what they were doing is they brought the science of Kemet, Egypt, to the rest of the world.
Yes. They spread it out. Well, hold it. Egypt was already spread out. But the people that maintained that high art, that high society, those things, were the Moors. And whenever you see these secret societies, they're doing Moorish rituals and the Moorish temples and all these different things. That's based on
Egypt,
a black society that ran everything.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so now let's move on to the slave trade. So this started in 1416. And it was started by the Portuguese. The Portuguese started the slave trade. And they came into West Africa, stole some black folks, and went and sold them in Europe and was like, you know what? We can make a bunch of money doing this. So they kept doing it, and other countries joined in, and it continued until the middle of the 1800s. So,
and don't forget, we ran when my brother talks about Spain and Portugal are right there side by side.
Mm-hmm.
When Moors took over the Iberian Peninsula, when they got out, the Dark Ages were originally when Europe was in decline, and the Moors saved it. But some people consider the Dark Ages when black folks took over Europe, and the Iberian Peninsula was part of that. So yeah, when we no longer were in power, the Portuguese okay, we ain't ever being put in that situation again.
Yeah, but it was the Moors that cleaned those folks up though, and had them washing their ass and taught them medicine.
They had a nun. Remember, there's a story. There's a nun that had not took a bath for 80 years because they believed that taking a bath,
that pussy nasty.
Oh my God! So that's how serious these people are about things that aren't true. The point we're trying to make, the Portuguese knew exactly what they were doing when they came out that and they began the slave trade. They were getting us back. They were trying to get the black folks back for running their area, their country for so many years, and they punished us. And so, the other thing that happened, we were talking about the Roman Catholic Church. Remember, they're the ones who divided the whole world up.
But the Roman Catholic Church sanctioned slavery.
Yes, they did.
They were complicit in slavery. Even though they had black popes, they were complicit in slavery.
Yes.
But hold on. But this is what bothers me. This is the shit that bothers me. And, being a black person in America, you will at some point get into an argument with some ignorant African motherfucker that's trying to talk down to you. All right, and I'm gonna tell you right now, don't take that shit. Do not take that shit from the motherfuckers, because I'm gonna tell you why, and I can tell you how you can shut the motherfuckers down right away. Because there was never a rescue mission. There was never a rescue mission. Wait. There was never a rescue mission, and those motherfuckers were helping white people to sell Africans into slavery. A lot of sellout Uncle Tom motherfuckers along the way. Go ahead.
Hold it. One, Uncle Tom. There are certain countries that are cultures or tribes that were Uncle Toms. Second, there were remember Princess Nzinga.
Wait. Nick, hold on a second, man. Hold on a second. We're not talking about Nzinga. Nzinga was a tremendous warrior queen who fought the Portuguese.
Oh, no. That's not what I meant.
No, I'm talking about. We're talking about the whole other side over there.
Yeah,
that was
but
that was complicit, just like the Catholic Church was in this shit.
Yes. No, but what I'm saying is we're not taught those stories. There are literally stories out there that we are not taught on purpose. Because if we were taught those stories, then we know who can we go back to get help. You see, the whole thing about these countries in Europe, if you mess with an Italian person, they can go back to Italy and get some help. You know, if you mess with a Portuguese, they can go to Portugal and get some help. But when you're quote unquote a son of a slave or a daughter of a slave, you're not sure where you came from.
You are a stepchild. You are orphaned.
So let me explain.
Black people were orphaned in America.
The reason I know these things are lies, you got to understand something. Have you ever bred dogs? If white folks keep track of their dog's DNA, you mean to tell me they don't know where their slaves came from? It's bullshit. They know exactly who they enslaved. They know who came from where. They have those. What you don't understand is that there were already black people here. So the reason I'm trying to get you guys to listen to these stories and really use a discerning ear, we were taught that Lewis and Clark came to America, and they came and they were doing the Louisiana Purchase. Who was their guide? Their guide was a slave named York. Now, York was an African slave. How could he possibly guide them? That's because the black folks were already here. That person they enslaved was an Aboriginal person that was from this area. And so he guided them. These stories are right here in your face, and you're like, oh, yeah, they had a slave. Yeah, York. So how does nigga show him around if he hadn't been here before? So either Africans were already over here, or there was already black people here that they enslaved, and they changed the story and said, oh, yeah, we brought them from over here. They're fucking with you, because if you knew who you were, your ass wouldn't fall for this bullshit. You wouldn't fall for the Willy Bobo. This is important. There were great societies already over here in America. We, again, talked about that in another show. We talked about the pyramids that were already over here in America. We talked about it in another show. So we're trying to get you to recognize that some people say Egypt ran this whole thing because there were Egyptians in the Grand Canyon. We talked about that. There were Egyptians writing found in Australia. So how that, if Egypt wasn't this world power, how'd that shit go down? How'd that happen? Oh, because when they find that shit, they throw that away. When they find these giant skeletons, my brother keeps talking about, oh, man, shit, nah, that's a dinosaur. That's not a dinosaur, motherfucker. They fucking with you. You need to know what's really going on, y'all.
Okay, so
sorry.
we talked about slavery, but before the Civil War ended slavery in America, before all that happened in the 1820s, between 1820 and 1843, 4,571 enslaved Africans left America and went to Liberia.
Yes.
Liberia is a failed state, but you would think they were sabotaged, but it's a failed state. It's a failed state because of sabotage. But you would think the concept of Liberia on paper sounds like a wonderful thing. We're going to take these Africans that were stolen and give them their own country and let them settle that up. But here's the thing, though. You're going to give them their own country. How? Because you're going to send them back to a land that's already occupied by somebody else. So that's going to cause a conflict. But
hey, what about the fact that the resources were already taken stripped from that area? So you're sending them to some place where
it's the Trail of Tears. It's the Trail of Tears all over again.
Yes.
They did it. They said they did it first with the Native Americans, going the 5 tribes, the civilized tribes they sent to Oklahoma. And then they did this with these enslaved Africans that were in North America, and they brought them back here to this place that was stripped of the resources. But there has been American meddling in the country of Liberia since it was founded. Because it was founded by the American government, they knew they could use that as a political pivoting point in Africa.
A jumping off point, yes.
Right.
Yes.
So basically, look, man, I'm gonna hook you up. I'm gonna front you some dope, but I'm always gonna get a cut of the money that you make. What. So, Liberia developed over the course of 120 years, but it became more and more politically unstable as we got into the 20th century, and
that's when it became Rhodesia, didn't it? Didn't it change? Or
no, that's on the other side of the continent. Come on, man.
I know. I'm sorry.
Mozambique. You think
Yeah,
about Mozambique.
sure. Yep. You're right.
Yeah. But listen, so Liberia became more and more politically unstable. But it was the American intelligence agencies that used
Yeah,
this
yeah.
instability to create splinter groups that they could control. And so you have to understand that while it sounds like this was a benevolent gesture to take these Africans and take them back to Africa, it was all done politically and strategically. And so you keep these things in mind because now, dude, you got documentaries on Vice about General Butt Naked and drag queen,
Yep.
rebel fighters, and these motherfuckers like going to a village and like killing everybody, including the kids, cutting the kids' chest open and eating its heart. Just crazy cannibalism, like just lawlessness, just complete instability. And so you have all this going on. Meanwhile, also another failed state is Haiti. Now let's talk about them for a second. So now you would think a country that was free from slavery 100 years before the United States, you would think they would have their shit together a lot more than we do. Those black people over there would have their shit together more than we do. Nope. Because again, meddling by the Europeans has, and the Americans has caused that those countries to remain unstable. Grenada is another country that was a black ruler that was in control of it. But see, this is what happens when these white intelligence agencies and these governments, they find these countries that are rising in power, controlled by black people. They look to destroy them from the inside out, the same way the Romans were doing in the 2nd century AD. You see, this is the old game. It still works. Same playbook.
Look, this is how this whole conversation started for us. My brother's like, how come Haiti ain't got his shit together? And then you find out Haiti has paid billions of dollars in restitution to France. So how does if this place is so poor and so crappy, how do they have that money? Where did that money come from? You know, same thing with the
natural resources. Natural resources.
So even when France gave up these different colonies, they still own the rights, and they're charging rent to like two people in the Congo for these shitty buildings. It's a hustle. If Africa is so poor, how come these other countries are propped up on its back? How come they make money off it? Because we're not poor. We're poorly run. And that's all by design. So when we talk about these different organizations, you've heard of us talk about Boule. You heard us talk about the Trilateral Commission. You heard us talk about United Way. The reason we're bringing these things up is because these things have infiltrated us to the point where, one, when you even bring up the fact that this is a racist organization or this organization doesn't have, they gave me money, they gave me shoes, and people then all of a sudden you start shucking and jiving, and you don't realize that you ain't really done anything. There's a documentary out there. You know, when you buy these shoes in America, they donate so many of these free shoes to people in Africa. And this African woman's like, stop doing that shit. We got shoemakers here. If you want to help us, give us a resource or give us a loan. But don't sit here and send us free shoes because now you're killing our local economy.
But see, that's an NGO. And these NGOs are used as a cover group for intelligence agencies to infiltrate and do what they want. That's how they get their plants in there.
That was our point about the United Way. Me and my brother, we keep bringing it up, but I can't find it. But I had read Steve Coakley had talked about the mission statement for the United Way back in like '96, and it was tap the pulse of urban youth. This, and this. It's not setting up retarded kids with NFL players. No, it's so they know what's going on in the inner city. That gets conveyed to the Trilateral Commission, and then all of a sudden they know how to use money to control you. They're broke over here, so we'll give them a little money. Then all of a sudden they stop striving. They stop being intelligent. This is a hustle. It's a shell game. And these so-called organizations that are for black folks, Nation of Islam, if you get a chance to watch that latest documentary about the murder of Malcolm X, it's on Netflix, and you find out the Nation of Islam knew exactly who killed Malcolm X as one of their members, and he only recently died, never brought to justice. The FBI knew who it was. He may have worked for the FBI in the past. That shit is heartbreaking. So I'm sorry, I don't care what you say. Malcolm, he was literally helping our people. He was somebody to strive to be like. They couldn't compete with that. They didn't want him.
The question you need to ask yourself is why Farhad Muhammad split from the Nation of Islam, and why he and Elijah Muhammad didn't see eye to eye. Because he was more in line with the way that Malcolm was thinking. Because Malcolm and him were very similar in their thought process, and how they believe that look, Islam is for everybody, and under Islam, all men are brothers. And so, but they don't fuck with him because he's an OG, triple OG. You know what I mean? Farhad Muhammad. But see, that's the thing, though. They don't want to talk about him. They don't want to talk about him because he has power or he's respected. You know what I'm saying?
He believes what he reads, and he has conviction, and he's about really fixing shit.
Right.
Really doing
shit. Right.
So, like I said, so many of the things we said on past shows, so we're trying to rehash it, but we're trying to get you to see that how in the world, if this world was run, dominated, created by black folks, how come black folks ain't in power?
Oh, we ain't done, but hold up. Tulsa, Oklahoma, 1836 to 1921. There were black people in Tulsa, Oklahoma when the Indians showed up. When the Trail of Tears came through that area, there were black people there to witness that, okay? Just think about that for a second. Just stop and think about that for a second. These enslaved Africans that got free and got out of the South and went to the Midwest, because Tulsa is not in the South. I'm sorry to tell you, that's the Midwest, y'all.
Midwest.
So,
it's the Midwest, y'all.
Yeah, stop. It's the Midwest. So, but hold on. Paint the picture first. These black people, these Africans, saw these conquered people, another conquered people. They witnessed it. Watched them being marched into town, marched into this area by the United States government.
But here's my argument, Roscoe, because I'm trying to tell you, black folks were already here. Were the people in Tulsa enslaved Africans, or were they the black folks that already existed here? Because it's something that nobody wants to address, is that if black folks was already here, that means everything here is ours too. And they want to talk about you coming. So those Native Americans being marched down there. Okay, here's my question. So we learned that Cherokees had slaves, right? And they love to talk about the freemen and Dawes Rolls and all that stuff. But who's to say the black Cherokees ain't the original Cherokees and these other ones ain't the ones that got marched down? Because if that's the case, then Oklahoma and Arkansas belong to black people first.
Hold on. So you're saying the Eastern Band of Cherokees that identify with the Nation of Israel, you're saying that they're separate from the other ones?
I'm saying that they probably people. That's deep. So there are people that say that the Cherokees are Hebrew, right? But they keep doing these blood tests on these white Cherokees. How come they never do the blood tests on the black Cherokees?
Right.
Because Hitler even told y'all that the children of Israel are over here. Because if they did, so here's my question: why do you have a slave? Most of the time when people had slaves, it was for agriculture or for taming animals and this and this. So when did the Cherokees have a bunch of land that they needed to till, or when did the Cherokees have these herds of cattle that needed to be looked after? So they're telling you that the Cherokees own slaves when they're not telling you that the Cherokees probably were black to begin with. And they don't want you to know that. And so my brother's telling you that the black folks in Tulsa were already there because they're the original inhabitants of that area.
But here's the thing. The black people in Tulsa, their wealth grew. They gained wealth because of oil that was found in the area. The first people in that region to benefit from the oil, many of them were black people. And they owned land, and there was oil on that land. Now,
all over the place.
But there were wars for mineral rights because you had to be smart to know that you weren't going to give up the mineral rights to your land because that's how you benefited from the oil. And there were blacks that were smart enough to figure that out. So it created.
There were female millionaires, and one of them was in Kansas City. I can't think of her name. Please forgive me. Yeah, but yeah, she was a millionaire because of her oil rights. And I told you my own personal story about that.
Mm-hmm. But check this out. Let me continue with Tulsa real quick because Tulsa grew because of oil and the industries around it that benefited from this exploitation of this natural resource. And so these black people in this area lived there. They spent their money there. They opened banks, insurance companies, doctor's offices, dentist offices, movie theaters, grocery stores, you name it. It was all in Tulsa. And then this existed until the weekend of May 31st until June the 1st. And over the course of these 2 days, this is coming up on about 30 days, we're going to be at the 100-year remembrance. I'm not going to say anniversary because you don't want to celebrate it. Remembrance of the destruction of Tulsa. It happened May 31st and June 1st, 1921. And it started early in the morning, and they destroyed everything. And they stole some planes that were owned by black people, and they were using it to firebomb the city.
What makes that so complicated? The riot was over when they bombed that city. The race riot was actually over.
Mm-hmm.
The sheriff is the one who commandeered them planes, dropped dynamite. That's the first time that somebody dropped a bomb from an airplane
on America,
Black City,
mm-hmm.
On American soil. Yeah. The reason this is so important is because when you hear the term racism and you think of a cop. No, racism is that's when you're stopping somebody from ever having prosperity.
That's supremacy.
Colonialism. That's when you set up a society to pay a different society. So when they came over and set up America, it's to send money back to Europe, back to these other places, and they do it. They have perfected this craft. And again, you're so confused that you defend your oppressor. If you sit here and say like, "Hey, this needs to stop," oh no, I got my money. If everybody around you is poor, it's easier to make a sellout. It's easy. Rap music is a prime example. Look how rap was when we grew up, and look how it is now. You got maybe 3 or 4 intelligent rappers now.
Check this out. We got to keep moving, man. So we'll get to the music biz in a minute. Okay, so here's the deal. Now, the destruction of Tulsa, it destroyed neighborhoods that remained in a coma for over 60 years, and the blocks at the intersection of Greenwood and Archer Streets stood as silent proof of devastation until 1982 when people slowly began to rebuild. So check this out. Some of those people that were in Tulsa, they went west, they went north, and then some of them went back to the south to Atlanta because they heard of Auburn Avenue in Atlanta. Auburn Avenue, it rose to prominence because there was a race riot in 1906 in Atlanta. And this race riot, the fallout caused the blacks to move away from the white areas and concentrate their wealth and invest in the neighborhoods around Auburn Avenue in Atlanta. And so these neighborhoods then began to flourish. And then what you saw was you saw the reincarnation of Tulsa, but on a smaller scale in Atlanta. And so what happened then is that it rose to power. It gave, the world Martin Luther King and Jimi Hendrix and Little Richard and all these black entertainers that performed, Gladys Knight and them that performed on Auburn Avenue, Curtis Mayfield. And then because of drugs, it fell into decline. And so now through gentrification, it's coming back, but not so black. I live in Atlanta and I see it. There's a lot of white people on Auburn Avenue now. That shit bothers me because we need more black people. But I want to say something. I have partied in that neighborhood many times. And there's a special energy to that place. It really is. There's a special energy to Auburn Avenue. Black joy is real on Auburn Avenue. It really is. We have Sweet Auburn Festival every year on Auburn Avenue.
What's frustrating about that is whenever that gentrification begins, it gets really. It hurts.
No, but here's the thing though, because the gentrification is the reverse of redlining.
Yeah.
See, so what it is, it's a complete mind control MK Ultra. So they first draw a line around a chunk of land and say you can't move in here, and then 50 years later, they come back to that same area after you've been allowed to move in there, and like, you know what? Now we're gonna kick you out of here because we want to move back in here. That's the opposite of redlining.
But they want your culture. They want that energy you left behind, and they'll brag about stuff like, you know. Remember when Clinton opened his business, his office up in Harlem? People, they oh yeah, it's Harlem. It's such as Dizzy Gillespie played here. You're like, really? They were here because you wouldn't let them.
But Auburn Avenue is special, man. Like John Wesley Dobbs, he called it the richest Negro street in the world, after Tulsa, of course. But yeah, well, Auburn Avenue was a special thing. But you know, and now it's coming back, and perhaps we'll get more black investment coming back to the area. We'll see. Time will tell. But we got to move on to COINTELPRO. COINTELPRO, it was a operation that ran from 1956 to 1971. And this was the FBI. And it was a counterintelligence program, and it was used to control black civil rights groups and black revolutionaries in America. And they used, like Duck Tape was talking about earlier, they used black operatives to infiltrate groups like the NAACP and the Black Panther Party and SCLC and all these groups that were fighting on behalf of decent black folks to form our chunk in American civilization and equal rights for black people.
The first one that got to the Black Panthers is Richard Aoki. Richard Aoki was a operative used to disrupt the Chinese nationals in Berkeley, California. Well, they used him to infiltrate the Panthers early on. So the first guns the Black Panthers got were from the FBI. So think about Fast and Furious. think about these different things going on. The FBI has done this in the past. So we're just like, this is stuff you can look up. That's all we're trying to say. Look this up.
All right. So now we are going to diverge into something that has been a serious cock blocker and interrupter in the black family and in the black community. It is the American drug trade. And the American drug trade began actually in 1937 because it was the prohibition of marijuana that caused black jazz musicians and brown people to be locked up and arrested for something that was once legal. And it was all because of Henry Anslinger was hired by William Randolph Hearst, who was a newspaper magnate who hired him to take out the hemp industry. And in doing so, taking out the hemp industry, you took out the marijuana industry. And in doing this, you locked up.
It was a smear campaign.
It was a smear campaign that caused shockwaves to spread all the way into the 21st century until now, where you have
we're still seeing.
Until now, where you have dispensaries in black communities like Tulsa and Chicago, and now you have some popping up in black communities in Los Angeles and black communities in Denver and Seattle. So the drug trade, that's the marijuana side of it. The cocaine side of it is what has destroyed the black community. Crack cocaine. And they knew what they was doing. They knew the effect that it had when the CIA was using Rick Ross to bring it into South Central Los Angeles. And they were also funneling into different parts of the East Coast. They knew exactly what they were doing. And the crack babies, this is the fucked up part, because you talk about black excellence. The polar opposite of black excellence is a black crack baby. It's the polar opposite of that. That is a crack baby is a casualty of war.
Child.
Is a casualty of war. Seriously.
A child born addicted to something that they've never even experienced.
But see, but here's the thing though, it goes on for generations. So now we're seeing the children of the crack babies and the grandchildren of the crack babies. And the children of the crack babies are now making, we're going to go into music now. They're making music that sounds like there is something mentally missing in that person's head. Like there is a person that is devoid of true potential and creativity.
Lack of understanding.
But when you look at the greatness that child came from, when you look at all of the powerful black soul transcendental changing life altering music that it came from, you see.
Look, you're getting too deep. What we're saying is the only way for us to be derailed was by chemical means, because they kept putting things in our way, and we kept being great. We kept rising up, no matter what. I rise.
That's right.
Doing that. Right in the middle of the civil rights struggle, they couldn't beat us. All the stuff we accomplished for this country, we accomplished in the civil rights struggle. It was a black middle class. So all of a sudden, what do? They flood the inner city with drugs. Well, I've had the conversation. They took the jobs out the inner city, put it to the suburbs. Then they flushed drugs and guns into the inner city, and hence you got gangs and everything else. But the drugs, that crack baby thing, that's something that we're still experiencing to this day. Just because somebody makes it, they're an adult, doesn't mean that the damage ain't still there. You still have trauma, and that's one of the things that messes us up to this day. Most of us have trauma bonds. That's that shit that nobody wants to talk about. The thing that you have in common is as a commonality is a trauma, and so some of your friends are based on that. That ain't a healthy relationship. It's one thing when you can talk about that and get some healing. It's another thing when that's what y'all cling to, is that we all come from a messed up society, or crack, or my mom. Yeah, my uncle smoked crack. My mom did. So what about your cousins? What about the kids they produced? So this is what happens now, and like my brother said, we're on the grandchildren of those people, and all of a sudden you got somebody, they're stuttering and they're slurring their speech, and they ain't making no sense, and then all of a sudden you got somebody like Lil Wayne who is talented sometimes, and other times I'm like, ugh. They're born addicted to codeine, and how do you think that opioid crisis? I'm sorry, go ahead.
But here's the thing, though, you got to understand the greatness that these crack babies come from, because let's talk about music for a second. All right. The music, and how in 1803 with the Louisiana Purchase, and how it was the enslaved Africans that would go to Jefferson Square in Louisiana and would perform music live. That was the beginning of live black music in America. And that was the beginning of the music industry, y'all. That's where it comes from. That spot. That's where all the music in America came from. You got the blues, you got country music, jazz. It all came from there. And everything came off of that. Gospel music was always in the church, but it merged with these other streams of music coming out of Louisiana. And then you got rock and roll coming along. And then you get hip hop. You see what I'm saying? And then you get electronica and all this stuff.
Rock and roll was black music. Rock and roll was a term for having
all of it. All of it. All of it is.
All of it. So what we're trying to say is that even the things that we do organically have been co-opted by the dominant society.
Yes, but what I will also say on the flip side of that coin, though, is that through that music, you see true black joy. You see the power of the African spirit rising above the darkness in a music industry that is built and maintained by darkness, by people that worship the dark arts. And they will now put these images in the music videos that kids watch now, and how black people have stopped innovating and they're now imitating white people in art.
Just to get a deal, because it's more about the deal. It's more about making money than it is about making art in enlightening or transcending. Music can make you transcend. So there are people. You don't have to use drugs to get high when you have the proper music. There's proper calibrations, the vibrations going through you. You don't need a drug to reach that higher elevation. And so if you want an example, again, look at Haiti. Again, look at how many times these slave revolts, which we were not taught about, took place, and we did beat the dominant society. You have Haiti, who fought France and England, two biggest armies and navies on the planet at the time, and won.
Look. Examples of black voices that have triumphed over darkness and had transcendental music and voices. Miles Davis, Coltrane, Stevie Wonder, Sam Cooke, Jimi Hendrix, Tupac, Biggie. These people, Public Enemy, these people have created music that transcends time. Marvin Gaye. I'm talking about these are black faces that are on the Mount Rushmore of black music. Okay?
Look, you even have biblical stories where they talk about Joshua fought the battle of Jericho. That's when they walked around and hummed and chanted and the walls fell down. Music has that power. Sonic energy, power, however you want to describe it, it's there. And that's why music is so important. But also, if you corrupt it, then all of a sudden you got people chanting the wrong shit.
That's right.
Not going anywhere.
That's right.
Anything.
So I want to close out the show by reminding everybody that we came up, hopeful and really wanting a Wakanda to materialize in our lives. And perhaps it will. I don't know. But there have been examples in distant history, in the distant past, of these high civilizations that were created by black people. And they created wonderful and mind-blowing things. But what's difficult now to reach that again is infiltration, ideology, separation, derision, and people falling for all of the above. That creates a divide, and that creates a block, and that creates problems that you have to deal with and address at some point, because we are going forward in time and we have this baggage that we're just accumulating and it's slowing us down, and we got to address it at some point. So you have to transcend that. You have to go into the third eye realm of the astral plane and grow your spirit body and cleanse yourself physically to move beyond all this darkness and cut it loose from yourself so that we can reach that next level again.
Never expect that dominant society to give you permission to be great, because
they won't. They'll never. And you know what? Stop trying to get their approval. Stop trying to get their approval.
Stop trying to be discovered. You're like this artist who has written 200, 300 songs, but you want to be discovered. No, just do your art and transcend, and it will either the market will come to you, or you'll just be the greatest person we never knew.
Or you may not be an artist. You may be practicing chem science. So
you may not even realize that.
Just make it. Just build it. Just create what it is you seek to build with what you have.
Creation is the closest thing to Elohim that you can do.
There you go.
Women create when you're creating life. That's what God does, is create stuff. So you are naturally becoming closer to God by creating that. So make sure I'm sorry. Look, we had the ability to do crazy things, and when you find out that these societies existed and they fell, and we don't know why they fell, was it by accident, was it on purpose? But these things have existed. We have transcended to stars. We have done all that stuff. We are all brothers and sisters. So stop arguing over bullshit that don't matter. Stop arguing over a piece of land that don't matter. Stop arguing over a building. Stop worrying about a job that they created just to keep you occupied. The internet, all this information, but it's a jerk off if you ain't using it for self-education. That's all.
Wakanda is real. Wakanda is possible. Make it real.
It's happened. Yes, it's happened.
Make it real. Get after it. Make it real. We out. Peace.
Holla back.